How would you feel if you went to sleep and you woke up pregnant tomorrow? And the next thing you know is that you're having a healthy, full-term pregnancy. And in 9 months, you have the baby of your dreams. Getting pregnant can become easier when your treatment plan has exactly what you need to get to the root cause of your fertility issues. It's that simple. And by the end of this video, you'll know my approach to creating a personalized fertility plan that truly works for you and also brings a sense of peace and happiness towards your fertility. It's the same strategy that I've taught to hundreds of the women that I've helped get pregnant over the last 21 years that I've been a natural fertility expert. Just like Jessica, who recently shared this email with you. And I'm going to put this on the screen for you to read right now so you can check out what she said in her own words. So let me tell you a little bit about Jessica and how we helped her go from years of trying with no success to finally becoming a mom. Jessica was 40 when she joined the program. She had been trying to conceive for 3 years with no success after her first son was born. She had multiple miscarriages, multiple losses, and didn't know what the root cause was. She was eating healthy, taking some supplements, and doing all the right things, and still nothing was working. So we ran labs for her, and we created a personalized plan based on those results and her history. She was able to get pregnant after implementing her plan, which is what you are going to learn today. Exactly that. How to create a plan for yourself. So let's jump into it right now. Oh, and I almost forgot. And if you're serious about getting pregnant, I can help you too. If you want support, feel free to apply to qualify for my Hope Fertility Coaching Program using the link in the description below this video. All right, let's jump into it. Okay, so how can you get started creating your own personalized fertility plan? Well, I have created what I call the fertility wheel, and it's addressing all the main 12 areas that you need to look at, evaluate, and potentially focus on. And I'm going to pop that image onto the screen here in just a second, and I want you to take a screenshot of that so that you have this to reference, right, as you start to work through all of the material that I'm going to talk about today. So first and foremost, as you've heard me say many times, we need to do more testing. The likelihood that you have all evaluated and has the proper testing done to assess all of these areas is 0. So we need to make sure that you have all the proper testing done. But all of that's going to be a little bit different for each one of these. So I'm going to go through each one of these sections and I'm going to talk about them in a little bit more detail so that you can understand what you're looking for, what testing you need to do and why you need to do testing in those areas, and how you're going to create your plan based on that. Now that you've taken a screenshot, again, I want to remind you, if you haven't, let's take a screenshot now, and then let's dive into each one of these areas together. Okay, so you've got a screenshot. I've got the image in front of me so that I can reference it when I'm talking to all of you and guide you through it. So I always like to start at the top and work my way around, okay, clockwise. And at the top is diet. I've spent a lot of time talking about diet. I don't think we need to do a lot more here. What I will mention when we talk about diet is there are ways to do testing as it relates to your diet. And this would be looking at food sensitivities, right? So are there foods that you're sensitive to that others might not be that are triggering an inflammatory response or an immune response in you that you need to look deeper at? The other thing that I want you to look at when you're looking at this wheel or this section is, are you doing everything you can as it relates to diet? Can you be better? If so, how can you be better? Everything we're talking about today is something that you can self-assess first and foremost before you do the testing. Then the testing will kind of take it to the next level. So, do you eat 3 meals a day? Are you eating the right foods? Are they balanced? Is the quality of food good? These are things that you can self-assess and clean up. I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking for progress. And if you already put a lot of energy and effort into diet and doing well there, that means you don't have to put a lot more effort into it. You just might have to make some slight tweaks. Okay? I want you to grade yourself on this section like we're going to do with every section. Okay. If you don't know, then you put a question mark or a 0, and that means you need more effort and more attention to this section. If you are doing great in this section, you're going to give it a number 3. okay? And that's what we're gonna do. And so anywhere between 0 and 1 for sure needs attention. 2 needs a little bit of attention. 3 needs none whatsoever. So that's how I want you to look at diet right now for yourselves, okay? I want you to start to assess that for yourself and start to give yourself a grade as it relates to your diet. Second section is stress. And before I get there, if you haven't all realized already, make sure you've got a pen and paper out so you can start taking notes. Okay, stress is the second section. So again, assess yourself. Are your stress levels high? Are they low? Do you do a good job about managing your stress, or do you do a poor job of managing your stress? Grade yourself. Okay. Then I want you to say, well, do I need more testing to understand my stress levels and how my body is managing stress? If the answer is yes, then we can test your adrenal function, your cortisol levels, okay? That will help assess your stress levels. My favorite way to do that is through a Dutch test where you're going to get your cortisol rhythm, okay? And that would be how I do that. Now, if you recognize that you need to do better in the stress category, I want you to also start to make a list of all the things that you could do to improve how you manage your stress. So first should be, what are the areas in your life that you need to kind of be less stressed about or manage better when it comes to stress? And then how are you going to manage that stress better? Create lists for yourself. The third section is exercise. We're not doing really any testing in this section, but I want you to do some self-assessment. Do you exercise regularly? By regularly, I mean at least 30 to 45 minutes every other day. That's like the bare minimum. And it could just be walking. But also what we need to do when we're assessing exercises, we need to understand, are we exercising too much? So where do you fall into that spectrum? How do you grade yourself 0 to 3? And then does this need more attention? And if so, what are you going to do to give it more attention? How are you going to put that into your regular pattern, your regular daily lifestyle? Maybe it's cutting back a little bit more. Maybe it's adding a little bit more. Maybe it's modifying some things. How are you going to manage that better for yourself? Okay, so the next section is all about hormones. Now, this is a big topic. I've had many videos on hormones, what to look for, what to test, how to manage it, and so forth. But I want you all, again, to self-assess. Do you feel your hormones are in balance? If you do, great. Give it a 3. If you don't, where would you grade yourself? 0, 1, or 2? If you know that your hormones are out of balance, why? What is the condition? What is the issue? If you know. And then we need to look at testing. So if you haven't had all your hormones tested, like I discussed in many videos, we absolutely need to do that. That's blood work. And I did mention earlier when we talked about stress, I mentioned the Dutch test. That is also what I use to test hormones as well. So that could be something that you do in collaboration with the cortisol rhythm, the cortisol test. You can do all of those together. So we absolutely need to know where your hormones are at. We need to do that regularly. We need to be managing and looking at our cycles. We need to be looking at our hormones regularly. And then we have to have a plan to support that and address that. For that, you might need some support that you might not be able to do on your own, but you can get started with the other things on your own so you can bring more to the table, make that process a little bit easier. The next section is about your environment. Now, the environment, we could look at this in many different ways. Is your environment at home and at work healthy and safe? Is the environment outside toxic to you or not? Is the environment in your home toxic to you or not? And we kind of talk about toxins in a separate section, but I'm talking about here as well. So I want you to look at your environment and grade it. Can it be improved? What sort of assessment does it need? If we are going to do testing, there are lots of different ways to do testing depending on what you need in your environment. We're going to test your water. Are we going to test your soil? Are we going to test your body to see what toxins there are, which is one of the things I really think is very important. So what are we going to do to assess this section? And that's what you need to do. Okay, so you're grading yourself, you're creating lists like what could be improved, what couldn't be improved, and then we're going to do some testing when it comes to environment. This next section, digestion, is huge. I think most of us have digestive issues that are impacting our overall health and our hormones and our fertility, and we're not doing anything about it. This comes back to your diet and how well you're eating and how well you're taking care of yourself. So what are we going to do with our digestive system? Do you digest your food properly? Do you get bloated? Do you get tired after you eat? Do you have constipation or diarrhea? Do you have abdominal pain? These are all things that we need to self-assess. Do you have a family history of digestive issues? And then are we going to do some testing around this? So besides grading yourself 0 to 3, what testing should we do? I always start with a stool test when I'm looking at digestive issues, then I think you should too. You should be looking at a stool test. That's going to give you an understanding for the microbiome, how much good bacteria you have. Do you have any unwanted bacteria, microorganisms, overgrowth of yeast, the health of your intestines and your intestinal lining? This really gives you a lot of good information. And I will say, if you have any autoimmune issues, you should absolutely be doing a stool test as well. Mind-body connection is the next one. Most of us don't spend enough time here. So I want you to take some time on this section. This is the spiritual side of things. Do you have a spiritual practice? Do you pray regularly, meditate regularly, whatever that spiritual practice is that allows you to connect your mind and your body and get in tune with them? Are you doing this? And then with this is also belief systems. Do you believe that you can conceive? And do you have a practice around supporting that belief and nurturing that belief to help you keep that positivity and keep you moving in the right direction when it comes to fertility? Do you score yourself on this? There's no test for this. This is a personal test. So I want you to score yourself. And then if you need to improve, what are you going to do and how are you going to do that? How are you going to improve this process for yourself? The next section is structural. This is where testing comes in, and that's more like ultrasounds, MRIs, visual assessments. Is the uterus healthy and structurally sound? Ovaries, fallopian tubes open and functioning properly. The testes functioning properly. Are there any blockages? This is what we're looking for in this area. So if you don't have that information, you're going to put a question mark. If you're new into the trying to conceive journey, then this might not be where you start unless you already know that there's an issue there. But if you've been trying for some time, I would absolutely start to rule these things out because these could be hidden things that you are not aware of. So let's make sure that you are evaluating that process as well. The next section is autoimmune issues. I have tons of videos on this. We don't have time, which is to discuss this in detail, which is why I have so many videos on this topic, but absolutely something that needs to be assessed. And if you have a history of miscarriage, then there's lots of tests that you should be doing. And I want you and invite you to check out my other videos that would cover this in much more detail, okay? But do you have a family history of autoimmune issues? Do you know or suspect that you do? How do you grade yourself 0 to 3? Do you need more attention in this area? Do you need more testing in this area? And then if we know that we need more attention in this area, what are we going to do about that? Some of these things also require more support to you. So what provider are you going to work with to help you manage your hormones, treat your digestive issues, treat any structural issues or assess those? Same thing with the autoimmune issues. You're going to need more support to get this than you're going to be capable of doing in most cases. So who are you going to work with to get that support? It's a lot to cover. We're trucking through this, and you can see why you need a pen and paper now, right? Because there's so much here, and I'm just touching the surface here, right? I'm just kind of giving you a general understanding how you can start to assess this for yourself. So the next section is inflammation. Do you have pain, headaches, migraines, any pain whatsoever? Do you know you have endometriosis, adenomyosis, endometriomas, anything that could lead to a sign of inflammation or cause inflammation in the body? We need to address it and we need to assess it. Digestive issues, by the way, will also or can also lead to this. So do you have any inflammation? You're going to grade that 0 to 3. Do you need support here? This is also where you might need some additional support to address this area. And then you can do some testing, by the way, for inflammation. There's several different inflammatory markers that you can be looking at. 2 just simple ones is CRP and homocysteine, but there are more depending on the system that you are looking at. Okay, toxins. We talked about the environment before, but toxins overall are a big issue in our current society, a big issue for our overall health and for our hormones, and fertility is no different. So we need to assess our overall toxic load. My favorite way to do this is with a test, and it's a urine test, and this gives us a lot of important information that we can use to then address this. If you already know that you've been exposed, then you can, score yourself. If you don't, you put a question mark and just say more testing needed. And then you're going to have to work with someone to get that testing needed. And then last, but certainly not least, one of the most important places for me is sleep. We often compromise our sleep for so many other things. I've spoken about this many, many times. I think it's really important that we do not compromise our sleep. And I want you to self-assess. How many hours of sleep do you get? Is it at least 7 or 8? I prefer 8 at least. Do you go to bed at a decent hour? Do you sleep soundly? Do you feel rested when you wake up? Score yourself 0 and 2. You need more support in this area. How are you going to get that? How are you going to prioritize that? Now that you've looked at all of this, what are you going to do? How are you going to manage it? I would say focus on the top 3 or 4 sections that need your support more. And that's where you would start, okay? Now I want to hear from you. Comment below and let me know. Was this information helpful? What stood out for you? What sections need support for you? And what questions do you have about it? Comment below and let me know. If you want to go deep into your fertility and find the root cause that's not allowing you to get pregnant, which is what we discussed primarily in this video with this, fertility wheel, then be sure to fill out the application with the link in the description below to speak to a real person on my team so that we can identify if this is the right next step for you and see if you are a good fit to join my Hope Fertility program. As I said, we all need coaches and mentors and more support, and I can be yours if you want me to be. Okay, now I want you to keep learning, so make sure you check out these additional videos so that you can keep supporting yourself on your fertility journey. And until the next video, stay fertile.